Welcome to the How to Write Funny podcast. I'm Scott Dikkers, your host, and today we're doing a special episode. First of all, it's live, not on stage, but on Clubhouse. So we have an audience with us today, and we'll be taking a couple of questions from them. Secondly, we're talking about Web 3.0, or Web 3 as it's called, and my guest is JaMarr John Johnson, who is not only a 20-year stand-up comedy veteran, but he's an expert on Web3, crypto, and the Metaverse, and all these new blue oceans in comedy that, until I met him, I knew absolutely nothing about. Thirdly, I'm selling something on this podcast, to be totally transparent about it, but it's something I absolutely recommend you buy. I'm not doing ads. I've never done ads on this podcast. This is something I'm selling, and it can help you tremendously in your comedy career. It's approximately $1,000 in value, but it's on sale for just a few more days for $25. And what it is a chance for you to get a share of the profits of what other successful comedians are doing. That's the bottom line of it. We're going to walk you through all of this, what it is, what it means, and how to do it. So if you're curious and interested to know how your comedy can get a huge ongoing boost in terms of how fast you succeed, the size of your audience, your knowledge, and your connections, take a listen to what JaMarr and I are going to be talking about for about the next hour and a half or so. And DM either of us if you have any questions at all afterwards. You can find us on all the social media pretty easily. It's been pretty inspiring for me to see how JaMarr has used Web 3.0 to promote his own comedy and his own comedy career and his comedy connections and make a lot of money and create a lot of opportunity. This is a blue ocean in comedy. So I talk about this all the time. If any of you know that business book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, you want to swim in the blue ocean. The red ocean is the ocean that's filled with sharks, so there's a lot of competition. You're never going to rise to the top. You're never going to get heard or seen in a red ocean. So for example, if you start a Twitter account from scratch today, you've got 0 followers, you're in a red ocean because there's 1 billion people on Twitter and it's going to take you a long time to get seen or heard in that space. If you were an early adopter of Twitter and you came on with an account when Twitter first happened, that was a blue ocean. And you could get followers really quickly, and you could grow really quickly. And that's what we all saw with TikTok a few years ago. People jumped on it, and it was really easy to get a lot of followers and grow a big platform. People would go viral really easily. And going back even further, I saw that in the 90s with websites. So I created the very first humor website, and that was a blue ocean. There were no other websites. Nobody was doing that. Nobody knew what was going on with websites. So I started one, and it was theonion.com, and it was based on the newspaper that I was operating. And all we did was we took what we wrote in the newspaper and we put it online. And we became the very first humor website. The Onion has now grown to this kind of humor empire that has millions and millions of social media fans and followers. And it's, a multi-million-dollar business. That's the power of getting involved in a blue ocean. So this whole Web3 space, JaMarr, I'm curious to know, first of all, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
My absolute pleasure, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm curious about you and your history. So before we get into Web3, which I'm really excited to talk about, tell us who you are and how you got into comedy and maybe what the confluence is between your comedy and the Web3 space.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, Scott. So for me, comedy was really completely an accidental thing that I discovered when I was 25 years old and saw my first live stand-up comedy show. But before I can tell you about that, it really starts back into my upbringing. Humor was always a defense tool to ward off bullies and, just compete. I grew up in New York City from the Bronx and then Manhattan and Spanish Harlem on the Upper East Side. And, my mother struggled a lot with drug abuse, and my grandmother struggled with alcohol abuse. And so there was a lot of abuse in and around the home from a substance standpoint. And it kind of left me feeling depressed oftentimes. So really the only thing that made me feel better at times was just laughing at things. Laughing instead of crying is what my mother always taught me.
Yeah.
And so I remember, we would play the Dirty Dozens, on the block. And I remember I had this moment where there was a guy growing up named Lamont who was probably the funniest guy of all of my friends. Like, he just always knew how to just be really concise and tight with his lines, and he would always have everybody cracking up. There was a time when we were all in a big circle, and he kind of came for me, and I had an opportunity to come back for him, and everybody started rolling over, laughing and running away, and I realized the power of being able to make people laugh, and I was kind of hooked on using it. And so I used it in school a lot. It got me in trouble. I got left back twice, but then I got my act together and I got skipped once and then ended up graduating valedictorian. So in my mind, comedy wasn't something you could pursue as a career. It was just something you just did as like a coping tool for all of the trauma in your life. That's what it was for me. So I grew up watching, all the Def Comedy Jams and all the things on TV, but I didn't make any kind of connection that could be me. I was trying to be very pragmatic and practical, and I was like, okay, I'm going to join the military. I'm going to get a degree in accounting because people always need accountants, and I'll always have a job, right? That was kind of my mindset. But then something really crazy happened. My best friend, Sean, from college, I went to Auburn University, War Eagle out there, any of you Auburn listeners. I went to Auburn University in Alabama, and while I was in college, Sean was always hustling to try to find ways to make extra money, because while we were on scholarship, it covered book tuition and fees, but it did not cover the cost of living. So what ended up happening was that we were always kind of coming together and finding opportunities to make money. And he did a few things in the networking business. There was a company called Legal Shield, and he went out there and was selling like legal services to car dealerships and like mechanic shops and stuff like that. So he was always very entrepreneurial, and we kind of did some stuff together. But when I was 25 and I was in the Navy, I was living in Japan of all places, he mailed me a book without even telling me called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And when I read that book, it was like I had an awakening, and I finally realized what I was, because ever since the age of 12, I was making money on my own. I realized that I was an entrepreneur. But I was in Japan, and he was in Virginia, and he was doing things with real estate and making a ton of extra money alongside being a naval officer. And I'm in Japan as a naval officer, working my tail off, working 18-hour days, and there was nothing that I could really do or see that I could do. But then on one fateful month, it was December 2005, my ship sent me to Newport, Rhode Island to be the anti-submarine warfare officer. And while there, it was the middle of the winter. Somehow I kind of looked around for things that I could do in the States with all of this now, newfound, 6-figure salary and 25 years old. I was like, well, I want to spend some money and do some fun things. One of the things I wanted to go do was see live comedy for the very first time. And there was a show in Boston at the Improv at Faneuil Hall, and it was the cast of the Dave Chappelle Show going to be there performing. It was, I remember the whole lineup. It was Kyle Grooms, Marina Franklin, Bill Burr, Donna Rollins, and it was headlined by Charlie Murphy, rest in peace. And so the day of the show, it was a snowstorm, and they literally told everybody to stay off the road, to not go out of town, not do anything. But I was like, listen, I paid $40 for these tickets. I am not going. So I drove very slowly 3 hours before the show started to get there on time. When I got there, the room was packed. It must have been about 700 people packed, and packed in like sardines, like really in tight. Like they were trying to make sure every single space was filled. And not only did I have the time of my life, but I had this kind of flashback to all the times I made people laugh, and I realized, this is something I could probably do if I really applied myself. And the fact of the matter was, the accountant in me calculated all of those seats, $40 a ticket, 2-drink minimum, and this was one of 9 sold-out shows. It dawned on me that not only was this fun, but it was a real serious business where they probably did about $1 million, maybe $1.2 million that weekend alone. And I was like, this is something I gotta look into. And then I just found every book that I could find. Obviously, I went back to Japan, and there wasn't a lot of places to perform there, but there was a few places on base that I did a lot of open micing at. And ever since then, December 2005, I've been hooked on the idea of being a comedian, but more importantly, an entrepremedian, right? An entrepreneur who understands that the core of his business is comedy, but there's so many ways in which you can leverage the comedy into business opportunities. And that was kind of my notion from the very first time that I started.
That's an awesome origin story and so unusual. common in the beginning because a lot of comedians turn to comedy as a way to cope with trauma in their lives. But what you've done with it, like how you've turned it around and thinking of comedy as a business, you don't see a lot of comedians doing that. In a lot of cases, they see the business side of things or the marketing side of things as almost like the dirty part, the dishwashing part of the job that nobody wants to do. It's not fun or whatever. It's not glamorous. And you love that. Like, you love connecting with people and finding opportunities, helping other people make the most of their opportunities. I want to get a sense of just what are some of the ways that you use your entrepreneurial skills in your comedy. Like, you have multiple streams of income, you do all different types of things. And how did some of those get started?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, shout out to my friend Sean, shout out to, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which, I've got some really deep insights about that book and how it came about and how it became so popular. The network marketing industry actually, someone in that industry read that book, found it incredibly powerful as a mind shifter. And then what they did is they promoted that book throughout their industry. And that's how he became so popular, because it didn't really sell much on its own. It sold because there was an industry that grabbed hold of it, helping people shift their mindsets, right? So that book in particular just talked about the difference between the rich dad was actually someone who was not college educated, but understood that with my resources, I had better buy assets that then made and generated money for me. Right? And his poor dad was his father, who was a PhD and was the president of a university in Hawaii. But he just spent all of his money on things that did not generate more money for him, right? A big house, a big car, nice suits. He looked like he had money, but he didn't have his money working for him. And because I had that accounting background, and I was always pretty decent at math, it started to make sense to me. Like, the moment that I started doing comedy, I would look at, okay, if this gig is paying me $50, but I'm driving 120 miles both directions, I know how much I'm getting because I always filed my own taxes myself. Like, I'm actually losing money on this endeavor. However, when you're new, you need that stage time. You need to actually develop yourself. So if you can go someplace far away to get more stage time, then it might be worth the trade-off, because the skill, as you harness it, can end up paying you more in the end. So I think that book, because it gave me a clear understanding of what I was, and I took some of that education and applied it to it, I always started looking at things from I'm investing some time and energy and some resources. What is going to be the thing I get on the other side? And I always knew that the material you make, whether it's writing, the stuff you write, and the ability to perform it, that's the end product that you can use again and again and again. So it's like, I always looked at it as like the product that I'm developing is my act that I hope to, market and sell. And, I can sell an unlimited supply and I control it. And then obviously, you can put it into different forms. You can put it into book form, course form. You talked about the multiple streams of income. In that book, he talked about the importance of that. And there's actually something that's really powerful that I looked at called the cash flow quadrant. The cash flow quadrant shows us how, in quadrant number 1, right, the top left-hand quadrant, everybody starts off most of their professional life as an employee. And then you shift and you go to the lower left-hand quadrant, which is the S quadrant for self-employed. Now, there are a lot of people in the self-employed quadrant who make a lot of money, but they are just their own best employee, right? If you're a surgeon, right, you make a ton of money in that quadrant, but if you don't do a surgery, you don't get paid. So vacation time for you is a loss of revenue, right? And then if you go up to the top right-hand quadrant, you have a business owner. Now, a business owner is powerful because if you have a business, it's operating if you're present or not. So you go on vacation, but it's still generating income because you have employees that are doing the work for you, right? Which is a sort of leverage. And then the lower right-hand quadrant, that's called the I. That's the investment quadrant. That's where your money is doing the work. And money is the best employee because it never complains, it never gets sick, it never takes time off. And if you allocate it correctly, it generates a cash flow that monthly will give you the opportunity to then spend that and not the principal. And then if you look at, my degrees in accounting, Albert Einstein once said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And I have a quote that is, automation is to your time what compound interest is to your money. And so if you learn how to leverage it, you can generate more money without necessarily spending more time. So marketing for me, it became a necessity because it was like, how can I scale anything that I do? If you're performing and you get paid to only perform, well, that's not really scalable because you have to show up someplace. You have to physically be there. That's just self-employment. So how can you take the things you do from a content standpoint in that self-employment category and then have the content become the business, meaning the videos that you make? So the idea of being a content entrepreneur, a lot of people have kind of gotten it because like with Twitter, people grow their following and then they use that to sell tickets or sell books or sell merch. Instagram, same thing. TikTok, same thing. YouTube, same thing. But what about LinkedIn? I was like, who's doing anything that's remotely funny or interesting from an I call it edutainment, but it's education and entertainment from that standpoint. So I actually have a course on LinkedIn called Super Connecting, in which I've trained over 5,000 people in the art of professional networking, but with a level of entertainment value that makes it really interesting to watch to completion. And every time somebody watches that video for free, I make money from the platform that is LinkedIn Learning, which is formerly lynda.com, which is basically a content platform that people would pay memberships for and have subscriptions to. So I realized that if I'm only going to make money as a comedian, then I'm only going to get paid if I actually perform and do a show. Well, what happens if I get sick? What happens if, I break a leg? What happens if my car breaks down and I can't get to the gig? Then I don't get paid. So from the very onset, I realized that I had to create multiple streams of income so that I would be sitting on a stool that had more than just four legs. Because if you have a stool with one leg, right, one stream of income, somebody kicks that leg from underneath you, you fall flat on your face and you got to start over again. It's essentially, you're going to be homeless. And I was like, I do not want to be a starving artist. So I've got to figure out how to monetize as soon as possible. And that also meant I monetized in ways as a stand-up comedian when I really didn't have the time, right? I would go do 30-minute sets for money when I only probably had 5 or 10 minutes. But I found a way to stretch myself because I was constantly working on my craft. And I knew that if I didn't stretch myself, then I wouldn't be able to ever fill that time. So I kind of just reached out and kind of, had faith and prayed. But also I did have, some natural ability that I had developed since I was a young teenager.
That's super inspiring. And something that I try to pass on in my comedy business school to all my students there, the idea of that I quadrant. And by the way, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it really is a great book and it's worth reading. One of the probably top 5 business books. The way you've used that to have a stream of income coming from LinkedIn, where you're making money passively, and then you can still go out and do comedy. These are, a comedian who can do this, like you, is the comedian who has a foundation of financial freedom, and that gives you so much more power to propel your own comedy career. And it's really been amazing to watch how you do that. And the new and exciting arena that you're getting into is Web3. So explain what that is and how it started, how you got into it, and we'll take it from there. Because what we've talked about now is like a great foundation we've laid for the idea of maximizing your opportunities, maximizing your potential to earn money with your comedy. And this is an exciting new one.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So Web3, in simple terms, right? Web 1.0 was someone has a website and you can go find it, go to the URL, and you can read their website. You can scroll up and down. You can go from page to page.
That's me. I was Web 1.0.
Yep. Web 2.0 is more of a read and write. So you can not only go to their website, but maybe you have a comment section on your website where someone can add their own inputs and kind of build on what you've already done, which also then turned into social media, where now they don't even have their own content waiting for you. You get there and it's a blank slate and you're just putting your user inputs, but other people are then interacting. And so it's creating this web of connectivity. That's Web 2.0. Web 3.0 are the same components, reading, writing, except one important new component, which is ownership. Web 3.0 means you have the opportunity to be a part owner in the profits of the platform. So if you go back for a second and go Web 2.0, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, most of the revenue generated by those platforms is kept by those platforms and their shareholders, right? Those initial investors who, let's put it plainly, people who have lots of money get access to deals before everyone else does. People invite them to lunch and dinner, and they're always trying to pitch them ways to take their money and put it to work, right? That's the power of being in that I quadrant of the cash flow quadrant. When you're an I, people see you as a resource to come and tap. But that doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything. That means you're just going to get a lot of opportunities to decide where to allocate your resources. So that's Web 2.0, people who own, right? Or everybody who has shares in Facebook. Now listen, the average person can go buy shares in Facebook, but they're not going to buy enough shares that it's going to spit off a cash flow that then frees them from their job because they don't have enough capital to do that. By the time it's open to the public, it's not too late to make a killing depending on how much you buy when you first start, but you're far away from that initial alpha of, taking $1,000 and turning it into $10 million, right? But with Web 3.0, you have all of these platforms sprouting up, and they are sometimes, a share of one of these platforms, a coin or a token, can be, 5 cents, 10 cents, 30 cents. And from that starting point, you can take $100 and in a couple of months turn it into 1,000, turn it into 10, etc. Because as the platforms grow through the network effect, you are one of those original shareholders. So you get to maximize some passive income by helping platforms grow. Video platforms, social media platforms, texting platforms. I mean, there's really a whole slew of new products that are coming, let alone the metaverse. For example, I used to own some shares in Sandbox, right? That metaverse where people are buying land for hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. So that's what's driving up the value of those initial tokens, because those tokens are partly used as a means of exchange, but also partly used as a way of validating people on the system, but also validating the system itself. Now, how I got into Web3 was that, knowing that I had to diversify my income. In 2010, I'm going to Naval Postgraduate School studying system engineering analysis, and I had an article come out with a guy who bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. Now, even back then, I knew that was an idiotic mistake on his part, right? I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, Bitcoin just came out. Why are you spending it so quickly? But he had no idea what it would be worth one day. And would you believe that this guy still, to this day, doesn't regret selling those 10,000 Bitcoin for those 2 pizzas because he said, hey, my kids were hungry. We needed something to eat. But I'm like, you didn't have money. You didn't have any other money laying around. Like, no regrets at all. That Bitcoin today would be worth $37 million. So,
yeah.
So when I started to write jokes about Bitcoin in 2010, no one was really getting it because it just sounded like a fad, like a goof. But it was like, remember when the internet first started? People said that it was going to be a fad. And so for me, it was like, I know that to really make it big in this world, you have to either refine something that's broken and do it at a scale, or be early to something. So in 2014, I was out of the military already. Bitcoin was making some waves again. I bought some of my first Bitcoin at $234. And I used to tell people about it. I used to post about it on social media. And, people just thought you were crazy. And, oh, you're just trying to get people into a pyramid scheme. But the thing is I had done, at that point, probably at least 10 or 15 hours worth of studying about Bitcoin. So I knew the validity of the protocol. The white paper is only 9 pages long. Most people have never read it. If you read that white paper and probably watch maybe another 3 to 5 hours of content between documentaries and videos you can watch on YouTube, it will give you the level of confidence that the protocol creates a level of fairness, because ultimately, think about it, last year in the United States, they printed $5 trillion to keep things afloat. So let me ask you a question. If we're playing a game of Monopoly, Scott, and I go to the bathroom and I come back with 5 million fake Monopoly dollars and inject that into the game, do you have a chance of beating me in the game of Monopoly at that point?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. So what cryptocurrencies do is they create a blockchain, so it's secure. Bitcoin has the most secure network in the world because there are over 1 million computers all verifying the same data. But because there's a finite amount of Bitcoin being created, that creates a set fixed number that can't be inflated at a later time. And so that gave me the confidence that, okay, this is my all-in moment. And now also at that time in 2014, I packed up my car because I had spent about 1.5 years in New York after the military, and I was like, these winters suck. So I need to get out of here and go to LA and be where the palm trees are, because I just would prefer to have a higher quality of life. So I made that investment and then came out west, and it did some really big numbers over the last few years, right? From 234. So that had me just looking more and more into that area. And so while I did other things to make money, I had a friend who 2 years ago, actually 2018, he went all in on crypto and has literally been full-time making all of his income from crypto since 2018. And I'm like, I still want to do comedy. There's other things I want to do, but I was like, if you dive in and really start to understand these protocols and start to understand how to evaluate projects, you'll see that from an eye standpoint, there's no better investment right now. Bitcoin has grown by 500% a year for the last decade. There's nothing else in the world that has done that. Real estate, any of the stocks that you could name. So for me, this was the best opportunity to kind of get ahead of that learning curve and be at the cutting edge of innovation.
Yeah, and I really resonate with what you said about people laughing at some of these new things where you have a chance to be an early adopter. It's a natural defense mechanism, especially among comedians, because we're skeptical. We want to make fun of things. We want to laugh at things that seem foolish or whatever. I remember how much people laughed at me for making a website, for going online with The Onion. It was like, what are you doing? You're paying $400 to start a website? You're crazy. What's your monetization strategy? How are you ever going to make that $400 back? That's my business partner literally said that to me. So, and
I got to tell you a quick funny story, Scott.
Yeah, sure.
I had something really remarkable happen to me in 2009. So right before that Bitcoin thing, 2009, I was on an OkCupid date in Oakland, California. And I was about to take this girl out, and it was raining outside, and I had my umbrella, and I was a lieutenant in the Navy, so I was all smooth and suave, and I was taking us to the car. And as we looked across the street, there was a line of people standing in the rain. And I was like, hey, what's that? What are those people standing in the rain for? She goes, oh, Dave Chappelle just got back from Africa. I was like, word? I was like, well, let's go see him. She goes, oh no, the tickets are expensive. I was like, how much are they? She's like, they're $55 a piece. I was like, $55, girl, I got you. Let's go. I'm paying for it. It's all on me. I'm balling, right? So we go over to the club. We happen to get in because there were 9 people who didn't show up because it was raining. So some people were like, nah, I'm not going in the rain to see why this guy disappeared from a show for $50 million and went to Africa. So for me, this was like a must-see opportunity. And as a young comedian, I was like, there's got to be so much that I can learn. I got to go through there, right? So we go in there, and at the time, I was one of those, like I said, I'm a business-minded comedian. So I had business cards printed out, and it was funny because all of the older comedians that I would run into, they'd be like, man, only goofballs have cards. They're like, what do you need a card for? I'm like, so somebody could hire you for a private birthday party or something. Like, I'm thinking about ways to monetize. And they were like, just get funny and it'll come to you. And in my mind, I'm like, you know what? That's just not how business works. You could be very, very talented, but if you're not connected, if people don't know who you are, if you're not known, you're not going to have opportunities. So I was always like, giving out my business card and hustling. So we get inside the club, and the show was supposed to start at 10, but Dave was taking his time to come out. So before the show, I'm in the club networking. I'm handing out my business cards, and people are like, oh, nice to meet you. Everybody's excited. People don't realize at comedy clubs, it is the best time to network because people are drinking, they're in a good mood. So I'm like, you know what? Let me network a little bit. So I networked a little bit. Now, 2 hours into the show, a bunch of people get kicked out because they kept yelling, "Rick James, bitch!" Right? And you know, at first Dave was handling it masterfully for about 2 hours. And then at some point he got really tired of it. It's like, all right, you guys got to go. And these 2 seats opened up right in the front of the stage, right? And it's funny because, you know, look at what just happened to Dave, you know, last night at the Hollywood Bowl where he got attacked on stage, but he handled it like a G. But at the moment, when those people got kicked out, the girl I was on a date with, she goes, "Hey, I'm having so much fun, but I got to work. I'm a teacher. I got to go home." So she gave me a kiss on the cheek and sent her on her way because she only had to go across the street. So I feel worried that she wasn't going to make it home safe. But I was like, "Text me when you get home." So she goes home, and the girl to my left says, she goes, "Hey, why don't we go take those 2 seats up front?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to get caught moving up to the front of the stage because security might come and, you know, kick us out." But then I was like, you know what? You only live once, right? So let's go for it. So I said, "You go first because you're a girl and he's not going to kick you out." So we sit down up front, and then 10 minutes while we're sitting up front, the girl says, "Hey, why don't you give Dave Chappelle your card so he knows you're a comedian and maybe he'll take you on a road with him?" And I was like, how naive of this girl. I was like, that's not how it works. I was like, I don't want to be I don't want to distract, you know, so let's just chill. But then something came over me because I was like, you know what? You don't know when you're going to have an opportunity again to truly kind of make a splash. But without being disruptive, how could I connect with him? So I took my comedy business card, which had my face on it and it had my name on it and had like my job description underneath it. I took it and I put it face up on the stage. And what you would not believe, but literally about a half an hour after that happened, Dave Chappelle was looking for things to talk about and he looked down and he says, "Whose card is this?" And he looks down and he reads it and it says, "Comedian, writer, singer, artist, handyman." And the crowd went insane laughing. And Dave Chappelle was like, "JaMarr, this is by far the most hilarious business card I have ever seen in my life." And I felt honored. I just pinned my website at the top of the room here, so you can actually click on that link and go to IamJaMarr.com, where I actually have the audio of Dave Chappelle interacting with my business card on stage. But one of the things that happened that was really profound, that created a shift in both my comedy career but also my business career. He says, "JaMarr, that's the most hilarious business card I've ever seen." He's like, "You're gonna make $1 billion." and I know he was just saying it in jest. But for me, it validated the idea that someone could be funny but also make money, that you didn't have to be a starving artist. You could figure out ways to monetize. And in fact, thinking about the fact that he walked away from $50 million because he knew his worth was more than they were willing to give him. So he was a hard line with his negotiation, stepped away. But in doing so, if you look at how he's rebounded, because he stood on his principles and his values and what he believed in, he probably, 10x'd what he should have gotten in that instance. And so I realized that there was a real need to have business savvy, because they say it's show business, emphasis on the bigger word, business. If you want to emphasize show, in most cases, you're going to get taken advantage of. And that's if you're in the music industry, if you're an actor, if you're a comedian, it doesn't matter. So I started to really focus on, let me get as strong in business as I can on stage and with my creative thinking, so that I'm never taken advantage of, but that I'm building something that could take me from just being self-employed to being business owner to being investor, which brings us to Web3. Because as a Web3 investor, my money is working for me, but my creativity gives me opportunities that can allow me more revenue to then fuel the investments.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people that focused on the show and not the business my whole career. Mm-hmm. And it was a real struggle for me because I was relying simply on the meritocracy of the audience and just trying to be as funny as I could and having that be my ticket to fame and fortune. Mm-hmm. And if I had been smarter about the business, things might have happened a lot faster for me.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate everything that I'm learning from you. And one of the things that I've had problems with in my career with doing the business part of it is the shame of being a huckster, the shame of
salesman.
Going out there being a salesman. It's a dirty word. It's totally a dirty word in comedy. So one of the things that I like about what you're talking about, and one of the things that resonated with me about that Dave Chappelle story, is that he was laughing at you,
Yeah.
but at the same time, he was saying you're going to make $1 billion. And so this is often what happens, what I've learned recently when it comes to the connection between business and comedy, is that if you are putting yourself out there doing comedy, in a way, you're saying, hey, you know what? Laugh at me. It's okay. That's what I'm here for. But when you're putting yourself out there to do business, when you're selling something or when you're pitching your show, which makes so many comedians uncomfortable to sell themselves and sell their show or sell their product, that's the same thing. You're putting yourself out there knowing that people are going to point at you and laugh and say, ha ha, look at the funny clown trying to be a salesman, or look at the funny clown trying to sell the thing that nobody's interested in because you don't have a big audience or a big platform yet. And the thing is, now I've been in the comedy business a long time, probably coming up on 40 years at this point.
Wow.
And
congrats, by the way.
thank you. I have seen over and over and over again the people who do that, who put themselves out there, who aren't afraid to get laughed at for doing the businessy stuff. They do get laughed at early, and they are picked on and maligned and mocked by the other comedians in their peer group, but they are always the ones who make it big.
Always.
They make a living at it, and they look down on everybody else, and they're like, well, I would have been happy to help you guys, but you're all still living with your parents.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. I got my own TV show. I'm making movies. This is kind of what happens, and it's really tough in the beginning. It's really tough when you're starting to swallow your pride and just do the thing that you know is going to make you get laughed at. So when I got involved with this, with you, that's what I was thinking. Part of me was like, oh my God, this is such a bro thing to go out there and pitch crypto. Like this is what people are laughing at right now.
Yep.
Is bros talking about crypto.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have any part of it, but I'm also open-minded and I know that it's smart to be doing business. So I have been trying to learn about crypto for, 3-4 years. And I've always been confused by it. Tried to invest in it early, didn't understand it, lost my passwords, couldn't get into the exchanges. Probably a pretty typical history. But I meet you because you're in one of my writer's room meetings and you show a clip of your stand-up comedy, and you're such a great super connector, one of your big skills, that we get talking and you educate me about what crypto really can do and what the future of it really is. And I start to get it. I start to understand it. And so I make the leap. I make the leap into Web3, and I'm like, yeah, I don't care if people laugh at me. I don't care if I post something on Facebook saying, hey, I made an NFT. And, you can laugh, you can laugh all you want, because NFTs are literally the laughing stock of the crypto world right now, or of the internet.
Well, they are to the uninformed.
To the uninformed. So that's why this is so different. It's not an ape. It's not something I'm trying to make, $1 billion at. It's Web3. It's a chance for people who want to be in a comedy community to take ownership of that community. So what you're talking about in terms of Web3, where not only are you doing user-generated content, you're an owner. I love that. So when I started The Onion, I wanted that for all the writers. I never thought about it for the fans, but I wanted all the writers who worked for The Onion to be owners. I wanted them to share in the profits of this company that we were building. Now, I wasn't the business guy. I was the creative guy. So all I could do was argue my point, and that got more difficult and more difficult as the company grew, and we started having like a board of directors and all this other garbage, and where you get to the point where they're like, you want to give shares to the writers for free? Sorry, it's not going to happen. And so it was a missed opportunity for me. But now, I have a community of people who have taken my classes, who are interested in learning from me about comedy and some of my storied 40 years of experience in the comedy business. And what a joy it is for me to have an opportunity to give them some ownership in what I'm building. So that's what you've taught me how to do, and that's what I'm doing. And it's super exciting. So this is the part of the podcast where I want to talk about what that looks like and what that means. So we have some big goals for this. But right now, we're just sort of dipping our toes into the water with this NFT, this one NFT, which has a picture of my comic strip character, Jim's Journal, on it. The great thing about this endeavor is that it has a future. So we have a plan for this. When I sell this NFT, which is my first foray into this Web3 space, I have early adopters who buy that, who are going to be founders of this online community with me. And so we're giving away a ton of bonuses to those people, and there's no telling what future bonuses might happen and what other kinds of benefits from being in that community will hold. And I would love to get your thoughts on that and how this all works, where people are buying into Web 3.0.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think of an NFT, right, which stands for non-fungible token, it's more than just a JPEG. It's a JPEG that has a code. You can almost think of it as a barcode or a QR code that ties it directly to a blockchain. And for having that code on various platforms online, it automates your access into those communities. It's like a key. So that's why we named this NFT Jim's Key, right? Jim Key, because it's a key to get into the funny world that we're building, which is going to be filled with opportunities, education, information, as well as the opportunity to be a shareholder in the future of Web3 and comedy. So to think of it this way, you know how when you buy a ticket to a concert, you have like a backstage pass, right? And you get to go back and hang out in the green room and do all these cool things. This NFT is like that, but in a virtual sense, but we can then attach real life events to the key holders, to people who hold this NFT. So it represents more than just, a JPEG or something you put on, your Instagram. When you see people like posting their image, that NFT represents all of the utility that the creators of that group have built around that NFT to give it value more than just a visual piece of art. An NFT is a encrypted, coded entry key into a community. And so you could have that NFT in your wallet, in your crypto wallet, like MetaMask or your Coinbase wallet, or if you have a hard wallet. And what it does is it actually doesn't live in your wallet. What lives in your wallet is the ownership of that NFT as it lives on a blockchain. So that's what it does. And so you can add unlimited amounts of value to an NFT, even after the fact, right? Because you get to decide as the creator of that NFT, how much you want to give to the holders. You could just decide anybody who buys this version 1, every single year from the time that they bought one, there's going to be another NFT that has different utility that they will get for free. These are things that you can do with an NFT. So it creates more than just transaction between artist and fan. It creates a relationship in which the person who owns the NFT is part of the community, and thus they reap the rewards, right? They say membership has its rewards.
Right. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this initial wave of excitement that we saw about NFTs, where people were buying these stupid apes that weren't even attractive. I don't understand the appeal of those. And they were selling them for millions of dollars. And everybody's laughing at that. And I feel like, and somebody's got stolen. I feel like, is that sort of like what porn was for the early internet, where it was like a gold rush, where everybody was like taking advantage and everybody was making fun of it because it was like the Wild West. And now we're kind of stepping back and soberly saying, okay, wait, what is this really, and how can it actually be good? And how can we use it in a way for real people to get involved and have real value?
So when you think about those apes, right? When you think about those apes, what you have to understand is that people bought those apes because in part of the network that it gave them access to, right? It's almost like thinking about, like, why do people join country clubs? Like, when you come from poverty or you don't come from a lot of money, a country club just seems like some, place that rich people go to just separate themselves from the poor people. right? That's kind of like the very cynical way of looking at it. But what a country club actually is, it's a informal place to network for what? Business purposes. Clubs are places people go to network for business purposes, or if you're somebody looking for people, like remember there used to be something called the Friars Club where comedians
Sure.
and writers would come together. Why? To network, to create, to bounce ideas off of each other.
Yeah, deals would happen.
Deals would happen, right? So all these NFTs represent an opportunity to be in a virtual club of sorts. And so belonging to certain clubs gives you access to certain people. And listen, I will tell you this. If you haven't heard it before, your network is your net worth. If you have 4 friends that are millionaires, eventually you will become the 5th if you're paying attention, if you're asking questions, if you're bringing value to that group, right? If you're hanging out with 4 broke people, you will probably become the 5th, because if you have money and you got 4 broke friends, they're going to be constantly borrowing money and asking you for stuff, and so you'll eventually be broke with them, right?
Right.
So who you surround yourself with is who you end up becoming. So
Yep.
when you buy into certain NFT projects, one of the ways you assess the project's value is you look at, well, what are the bonuses I get for being in this group? What's the value added? And you can calculate that. Usually there's an amount you can kind of figure out. In the marketing world, it's like, and then there's more. And it's like, and for this, you get that, and you get this. Well, those are the NFT projects that are really going to stand the test of time because it's utility based on real value. And I'll tell you this, because one of the value added things that we have with the gym key is the writer's room. That's something people can pay into right now if they just want to transact. But if they hold that NFT, they'll get 90 days to try that particular service that we provide as a group, as a community. They get to try that at no additional cost and see if it's valuable. Eventually, we'll probably have an NFT that gives people lifetime access, right?
Yep.
At a high enough point. And then, again, it takes it away from simply transactional and it creates lifetime value. There's something called a never-ending ticket. They used to offer them with airlines. I believe Delta used to have for $100,000, you could have you always can fly first class whenever there's availability, right? Of course, at some point they can't sell 1 million of those, but companies can do things like that to create buzz, to get an influx of cash, and then really treat a certain select group of people as founding, supporting members. And people who found stuff usually going to get the maximum reward out of stuff.
Yeah, I would love to have you share a few thoughts about this exchange that we decided to put this NFT on, Rally.io, because I think we've all heard of like Coinbase and some of these Poloniex and some of these other exchanges, but a lot of people haven't heard of this one.
Yeah.
And you really made sense to me when you explained it. And then I went on and explored it, and I saw one of my friends on there, Felicia Day, is on there with her own token, and she's got a really big following. She's in the like gaming space, and so she's got like 1.5 million followers on social media. And so she's a great candidate for this way to have her community be owners of everything that she's creating. And that's what was exciting to me. But I would love to hear you explain it because you know so much more about it than I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at Rally.io, that's the website. They are a venture-backed startup company that most of their executives are former Coinbase employees. Again, your network, right? So imagine you have these people who have been involved in crypto for a decade, and they have these ideas on how to create various products around what they're doing. And so they spin off, but because they have a network, they're able to just get their network to support them, right? So now Rally.io goes out and they raise money from where? From Coinbase, from a venture capital firm called A16Z, which is Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen and Horowitz are these two, multi-billion-dollar investors who have allocated, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars and have had returns of billions and billions of dollars. So they have more than 40 exits of over $1 billion. So these guys are smart guys. And my thing is, in investing, there's something called follow the smart money. If you look where smart money invests itself, find a way to build a business that supports what they're doing or directly, connects with them, and you're going to make a lot of money. That's just how business works. So Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z Crypto, which is a division of their venture capital solely allocated to crypto investments, right? So this is the type of investors behind Rally.io. And so Rally's been around for about 3 years, almost 4 years. They've raised a total of $108 million in venture capital. And 57 million of that is allocated to user acquisition. So with that intel in mind, anybody can go out and build their own blockchain if they have the right developers. But we're creators, right? We're creatives. Just because you can code, if you're a comedian, do you want to code your own website from scratch? Or would you rather use something like Squarespace or WordPress and use something that's already prefabricated and you can just use some of their templates to make a website? Now, if you want to get a website coded from scratch and have it be really beautiful and nice and interactive, like there's a story, Dane Cook, the first website that he had built cost him $5,000.
Yeah, that's how it used to be, yeah.
Right? But instead of doing that, we're using Rally.io, who builds blockchains and allows creators to use those blockchains and have your own coin named whatever you want. Ours is going to be Funny Coin when it launches in about a week. We're leveraging all of their programmers. We're leveraging all of that $108 million of investment, 57 of which is allocated to user acquisition. And we're using that to help build and launch our NFTs. Now, one of the things about our NFTs, they're $25, right? Of course, there's like a credit card charge if you're using your credit card, which obviously to buy most other NFTs, you have to use Ethereum. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of something called gas charges or gas fees, but there are no gas fees on Rally. So that means if I create 1,000 NFTs and I sell them directly to my fan base or client base or community base, they're not going to have to pay, a huge fee on top of that. Sometimes people pay as much for the NFT in gas fees as they do for the NFT.
Yeah, I've loved that about Rally being on there. Like, I haven't invested any money. Like, people just give you coins because it's so, Rally incentivizes creators so much to build their communities. They're just giving away coins that you get dividends from. It's pretty incredible. And that's part of Web3. It's all about what you can give. It's not about what you can take. And it works both ways because Web 2.0 was all about taking. It was all about these big companies taking your user-generated content and making a fortune with it.
Absolutely.
And I love how this turns that around.
This turns it around. And so on top of that, here's the big thing that really drew me to this platform is when you have a community that hold your tokens. So let's say you hold some funny coins. Depending on your percentage of the total coins held, that will entitle you to a weekly dividend that's paid out by Rally. So, for example, I'm in a coin project with an amazing creator named Mark Schaefer, who's the author of 9 books, 6 of them bestsellers. He's a professor at Rutgers University.
Yeah, and he's been helping us with this project. He's a wealth of information.
Yeah, wealth of information. And because I held about 20% of his project, every week I was receiving a dividend of about $2,500, right? That's cash that I could do whatever I want with. I could leave it in, I could pull it out, I can put it into my Coinbase, and I have a Coinbase Visa card, so I could use that Visa card and spend my crypto today, right? So the fact of the matter is, as people join the community, they're not just holding our token and waiting to exhale. They're getting the benefits that the community has to offer, and they're getting dividends on their money. So if you have to ask yourself, if I have my money sitting in a bank account today, let's say it's a checking account, what is the rate of return that I'm going to get on an annual basis?
Yeah, checking accounts are for chumps.
Right? Checking accounts are for chumps.
Getting 0.1%. You're not even keeping up with inflation. It's like losing money.
You're not. And it's funny, they said, inflation was 7%. That's the CPI, right? The Consumer Product Index, which if you look at it, it's a very hand-selected amount of items that most people don't even buy. If you look at the real cost of inflation, it just depends on what you're buying, right? If you're trying to buy a house, inflation is like 22, 23%. right? If you're trying to buy a car, inflation's 30%. It just depends on what you're buying. So let's be conservative, but let's say inflation's about 10%. If you're putting your money in something and you're getting less than 1% a year on it, then you are negative inflation, right? You're making your money is losing its value over time. So I just made some simple calculations with math, not even complex, and I was like, you know what? My money's better off being in a DeFi project where it's working for me. And then if I need it, I can access it whenever I want. There are no restrictions. So that's what made me decide to just go all in. And I realized too, with my knowledge of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency since 2014, that I could provide consulting services and help people in many facets to transition a part or all of their business into Web3, which then leads to comedy in the metaverse. Obviously, there are brands, big brands buying land in the metaverse. There's so many opportunities.
I wanted to talk to you, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about the metaverse and how that's connected with Web3, because that's another thing that I barely understand. But I know that people are doing virtual comedy shows. Like, how are they connected, and how is this another blue ocean?
Yeah, so I'm a founding member of another project that does comedy in the metaverse. We own 6 comedy clubs. If you have an Oculus, you can go into our clubs through the Infiniverse.
Now, what is what is an Oculus and what is the Infiniverse?
Yeah, an Oculus is just a headset you put over your eyes to go into virtual reality, right? So it's owned by Facebook. They bought that company maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And, you can find an Oculus on Facebook Marketplace used for, $120, $110, $150. I bought mine new. I bought mine for about $300. The minute that Facebook came out and said, we're changing our name to Meta, I was like, got to go get an Oculus right now because I need to understand and dive in. Because again, my goal is to be at the cutting edge of things. Because if you're at the cutting edge of things, you are like the pioneer, and then you can kind of wave people in and show them where to go. Those that want to save time, energy, and money, right? Not everybody's interested in that, but that's okay. I don't need everybody to be my customer. I don't need everybody to be my comedy fan. I know that comedy is subjective. So in the old days, there's a blog article, if you look it up, by Kevin Kelly called 1,000 True Fans, right?
Yeah, classic article.
Classic article. If you haven't read it and you're an artist, you need to read that article. In that article, he illustrates how if you have 1,000 true fans and they all pay you $100 a year for your product, services, or entertainment, then you will make $100,000 a year. But the beauty about that is 1,000 true fans aren't going to remain stagnant. 1,000 true fans are also going to go out and help you get other fans. So with that same network effect, 1,000 true fans grows over time. But with Web3, the same thing it would have taken you 1,000 fans to do. Web3 is like a 10x multiplier, because with 100 fans, right, investing in your projects, your NFTs, your creator coins, that then, because of Rallyio and other types of DeFi projects, it ends up spinning off additional revenue, right? Because they're paying you more interest for holding space and attention on their platforms because they have the money to spend. But here's the other thing. They know that they can go out and buy $1 million commercials at the Super Bowl, or they can buy billboards, or they can advertise in all these ways, but that is not going to be the best way. The best way to market and advertise is through word of mouth. So they're saying, why don't we just really pay our creators over the next 5 years to be the ones that educate their audiences? And so you have bands like Megadeth on the platform who have their own creator coin. And with less than 2,000 people holding those creator coins, they've generated over $1 million in value and equity for their community. And that's the power of the network effect and Web3.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's really anti-capitalist in a good way. It's like the core old school capitalism credo was, I'm going to make as much profit as I can for myself, and I'm going to charge the customer as much as I can, and I'm going to become Jeff Bezos, and everybody else in the world is going to be a serf. But this is so much more exciting because you can still grow your brand, you can grow your company, you grow your community, but you're rewarding your customers by having them be a part of it. it's like, it's very enlightened.
Well, yeah, your customers, your fans. Because listen, it's not just for artists and comedians and singers. And if you own a business, it behooves you to create a wide net of shareholders in your business, right?
Absolutely.
This is why Amazon. I don't know if you just heard, Amazon announced a 20-to-1 stock split, right? So that means if you have one of their stocks, it's going to split into 20, right? So that means that you're going to be able to have more shares. And of course, as those shares increase over time, that's going to create more equity, more value, right? More cash flow. If you have a customer base and you have a reward program or a loyalty program, that's still just them transacting to you. It's still them bringing money to you. But if you have a Web3 project instead of a loyalty program, now they are also earning rewards. They are also earning dividends, right? That they can choose to reinvest into your company or they can choose to reinvest elsewhere, but it's their choice. But then they're going to decide at some point, should I increase the principal that I'm holding with this company or business or creator that I support because it actually has increased value to me more than me just holding my coin there. And that's really, I call it the abundance model. It's where you can transact sometimes, but most of the time you want to just create utilities where they hold it because they'll reap dividends and they'll reap rewards, and they'll also become super fans who go out and tell other people about your work because not in part because it benefits them, but also in part because they become true believers of the value that it's creating and the support and the education. And it's not just, I want to make money off of you. It's like, no, well, let's make money together.
Yeah, there's nothing more valuable. I know this from, owning and running a comedy business for so many years. There's nothing more valuable than fans who feel a sense of ownership in what you're doing. If they can feel like a part of it, that's gold. So anybody wanting to succeed in comedy, build a comedy career, build a platform of any kind, anybody can do this. Anybody can go on Rally.io and apply to launch their own token to reward their fans for being a part of their community and their fan base. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it's not. We're not restricted to only build NFTs on Rally. This is just the place that we're starting because essentially they are jump starting us. Meaning, once we do this initial launch of 100 NFTs, which will be done with this launch in about 7 days, we're more than a quarter there on the way there. We're almost halfway there. We're almost halfway to our goal.
Right. We're live now, so it's 7 days from right now. Mm-hmm. If anyone's listening to the recording of this, it's May 13th at noon is when we're stopping this sale of NFTs for the current list of bonuses.
Mm-hmm. And so after this initial launch, we still have the ability to go build NFTs on any other platform. But the reason why we're starting here is because after this initial launch, then our coin, Funny Coin, will be brought into the world. And then we'll be able to do a lot more building and be in a lot more control of everything that is available and, all the copy. And they'll kind of turn the keys over to the Lamborghini to us so that we can drive it as far and as fast as we want to go.
Right. Yeah. With this, we couldn't even edit the copy. They'd have to take the whole thing down and restart it.
Wait. I got an announcement, Scott. Shout out to Phil Johnson. He just bought the number 40th edition.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil.
I wanted to take a question from our audience here.
Yeah, go ahead.
JaMarr, do you know what JAMB is? JAMBB? Is that another exchange like Rally?
No.
Apparently you're not familiar with that?
No, I'm not familiar with that one. That's definitely something I'll look into. So listen, there are a lot of platforms to build NFTs on. I actually know of some, and we're going to talk about this, Scott, because one of the bonuses that we're going to provide is a live virtual event. So we'll get together, we'll do some training on how to assess NFTs, how to assess projects, how to know what's a good one, what's a bad one. And there's even places you can go to build NFTs completely for free. But we're going to give you some of the pros and cons of doing that and show you, because first and foremost is building an audience. And this is where content, if Scott has been building content for decades. And so it's so important to have the habit and the muscle of being a content creator, or as I like to call it, content entrepreneur. Because listen, there's a lot of content creators who ain't making no money with their content.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what you want to be, because that burns you out. Eventually you get tired. Eventually, you've got to go work some sad 9-to-5 job in hopes of one day being a professional content creator. But I'm telling you, there are exact blueprints. I've got friends who they've got 800, 900,000 subscribers on their YouTube channels, and they're generating tens and thousands of dollars every single month. But they had to build up an engine, a content engine, so that catalog starts spitting out, passive income. So we're going to go through a live training for all of the NFT holders on how to do a lot of these things, because this is what I do. Like you said, I don't even call it my day job. I just eat, sleep, and drink this because I know that it's a pathway to freedom.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Let's go through more of the bonuses that we're offering with this NFT, because I want to give people an idea of how they could do this. Like this is what I'm all about. And
yeah, absolutely.
So aside from the comedy that I do, a big part of my life now is helping other people with their comedy and their comedy careers. So everything I do, I kind of try to do it transparently, out in the open, to show people how I know it's done. And so they can model that. Mm-hmm. So, somebody wants to do an NFT. I know a lot of people have thought of that. They're thinking, I'll draw something really cool and I'll put it up there. But that's not how it works. What I learned from you is you make it something of value that can build a community. So we came up with all these ideas for what are some bonuses we can offer with this NFT to make it a no-brainer to buy for $25.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when you look at the NFT that we've created, it is, first of all, it's a ticket, right? It's a ticket to a live event. Right, we're going to do an event here in Los Angeles, and some date in the future. So it's not going to be like in 90 days or 120 days. We're not sure, but it will be a live event at one of my venue partners. So it'll be a ticket. Then it'll be a ticket to a virtual event. We'll be able to do that a lot sooner. It'll be a live virtual event, and then it'll be a live Q&A for all of those people who attend that virtual event, right? So we'll be able to answer some more questions in detail because, again, you're a part of our community. So we want to be as transparent as possible because the more that you know, the more that we grow. That's really what it comes down to. After that,
I like all your rhyming credos, JaMarr.
well, you know what? I grew up. Hip hop is a big part of my life.
Right, you were doing the. Yeah.
I was a spoken word artist.
That's awesome.
As a keynote speaker, I've learned over the years that if you put things in very rhymey patterns and musical patterns, you're creating webhooks that allow the information to be actually more retained by the person listening.
Yeah, and you're great at that. And I just want to interject here 1 second. Sorry to interrupt, but that's another way that you've leveraged your comedy skills for money is by becoming a keynote speaker,
yeah.
Which is and I've done that too. I go and I give talks at colleges, and that's some of the best money you can make for your time as a comedian, going out and performing at colleges and corporations. Like you do a club, you're lucky to make $20, but you go out and do a college, you're making thousands. And more comedians need to be aware of that. And it just makes sense that you're so smart about business in comedy that obviously that's one of the things that you've leveraged.
Oh yeah. Like this week alone, I've made $7,200.
That's great.
In just two talks, right? So keynoting is definitely where it's at. And obviously corporations have a lot more money than some of these club owners who are small business owners who are struggling and need to get people in seats and marketing. And so there's a lot,
Yep.
You want to kind of go where the blue ocean is, where the opportunity is. And let's be honest too, most keynote speakers are not very funny at all.
Exactly.
Some of them have senses of humor, but most of them don't. So if you can set yourself apart by having a powerful message and being funny, you will get lots of work. I'm probably going to be doing 4 to 6 talks a month at this point in my pipeline. And that's just one aspect. But what's great about that is I also get to test out material in front of new audiences.
Yes.
And if the joke falls flat, you know what? They weren't really expecting me to be funny the whole time.
Exactly.
They're expecting a keynote. So no one really knows.
It's kind of like a little secret.
It's a hack, yeah. It's a hack. It's a hack to both make more money and get more stage time to work on your craft, and the audience is none the wiser.
Yeah, it's so counterintuitive too. You go and speak at a corporation, and I get invited to these corporations. I got invited to speak to a bunch of fracking people in Texas once, and they pay me like $15,000 to go and give this talk, and yet the audience is less critical than a stand-up audience.
Oh,
so
way less.
they're an easier crowd. So you're right. It's a great place to test material. It's a great way to just be comfortable on stage, and you're doing an hour. You're not doing a 5-minute set.
Yeah.
So it really is one of these great hacks that I'm surprised more people aren't doing.
But that's one of the benefits of being in the community. Now, this is stuff
Exactly.
that I
We
learned
share
on my own.
information about how to do this.
How to do it. Like I read books about this stuff, and then of course I just went out and tried it. But then,
as did I. Yeah.
right. But when one of the things, Scott, I got to give you kudos for and give you your flowers for is, I bought one of your products. I think it might have been a $24.99 or maybe a $27.99, or it might have just been a $30 product, and it was how to make money being funny, and
I used one of your rhymes there.
Yep, yeah, and I listened to that thing at least 6 or 7 times, and it's one of those things where I've listened to it in recent months just because the information is so good, and it just gives you negotiating tools. It just gives you ideas of all the different streams of revenue, and it just gives you ideas to then modernize for the different technology platforms as things changes. The tactics and the strategies don't change. They remain constant.
They're pretty universal principle. Well, thank you very much for that. I was delighted to see you in there when you showed up in the writer's room. That's how we met.
Yep.
So, yeah, let's get back to the bonuses of this, because like what we're talking about right now, this is a perfect example of what some of the bonuses are for buying this NFT and being a part of this community, is getting insight from people who are really killing it in comedy. And we wanted to make that as accessible to people as possible.
Yeah, so we have 6 main bonuses. I'll go through them real quick. We have access to the 1 ticket. So 1 NFT gives you 1 ticket to a live event in Los Angeles.
And you get some big names at those events. Like, this isn't a penny ante event.
No, this is going to be named, big name comedians, people that are funny, but also we'll probably do a Q&A after the event. So again, we want to create an extra value-packed event. So access to 1 virtual event. It'll give you 6 sessions in the writer's room, which is a service you could currently buy for, $10. What is it, $10 a month, which is a crazy value.
Yeah, and I think it's 9 sessions because we bumped it up to 3 a month from 2 a month.
Oh, okay. So 9 sessions. So you get 9 sessions to a writer's room where you can submit content of any kind and have a group of creative minds help you sharpen and chisel that material up.
It's so valuable.
Valuable.
It's a pretty intimate group. Like, it really is. It's a very supportive, great writer's room.
Yep. A digital copy of your book, How to Write Funny. So that comes free of charge as a part of owning that NFT. And then we're going to do an exclusive Web3 tokenomics webinar. This is going to be an in-depth webinar where we go over what makes a project legit, what makes a project worth putting your time and money into it. And then what are the benefits and what are some of the returns you can get? I have one project that I have literally made a 300% return on the money invested. Now, I know that sounds hyperbolic. That sounds like just fantasy world stuff, but it's not. And it's not sitting at your computer trading cryptos all day long.
Right.
This is just supporting solid projects that are in their infancy stage and have a tremendous growth potential.
Yeah, and when you're an entrepreneur, you start to see numbers like that in growth. Like when you're just a 9-to-5er and you invest money in a retirement account or whatever, you're in double-digit percentage return on investment. But when you're an investor and an entrepreneur, that's where you start to see the triple digits, the quadruple digits. I had an accountant who would laugh every time he saw my original cost basis of the amount of money I spent buying the onion and what it was worth now. It was literally like a 5-digit return on my investment.
Yeah. And we got somebody else trying to get the NFT right now, actually, and they're having a little bit of trouble. If you DM me privately, I'll help you offline. The one thing about Rally, and this is something that they're going to work on, right, is they're trying to make the process seamless and easy. However, their site isn't smooth on all browsers. So I highly recommend using the Chrome browser. I've tried to use Safari at times on my phone, and I would have different error messages. It works really good on Chrome, so that's just a little bit of advice. Desktop is going to be easier than mobile, but obviously we're on mobile at the moment as we're recording this podcast, so people are just clicking the link and going there. But what I would say is if you go to that NFT page from your mobile browser, forward it to your email and do it on your desktop or your laptop, that'll give you kind of the easiest way to go about it. But we appreciate your patience as they improve the UI UX design. That's one of the most crucial parts of onboarding onto crypto is how seamless is it? Because if I'm telling you, the best projects to invest in, they're not easy to get into because they're really truly decentralized. So you're not going to just be able to get into it through Coinbase. You're going to have to go to other exchanges that are truly decentralized and get into these projects and then get into things like farming and things like that. So, I mean, it can get complex, but we're going to walk you through with baby steps with that first Web3 tokenomics webinar that we give as a bonus for being a part of the Jim Key founding community.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. I'm going to learn a lot more. I'm super excited about it. And then we're doing another talk. You and I are going to talk about how to create a top 10 podcast.
Yes.
So I'm excited about that. This is something you consult with people on and you help people grow their podcast. I've grown 4 separate podcasts that have all ranked in the top 10 overall in Apple in my long history of doing podcasts. A couple of those were with The Onion. A couple of them were totally separate. And this is something that you and I bring really unique perspectives to. And podcasting, it's a little crowded. It's a little bit of a red ocean, but it's still an amazing way to build your platform, get your comedy out there. People love them. And it's still growing. It's still growing. So that's another amazing bonus that I'm excited to do with you.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that. And someone asked in the chat, what is the YouTube version of the of what's the Web3 version of YouTube? And I will tell you that one of the platforms that's out, it's still new, but they're growing pretty consistently. It's one called Odyssey. But again, for more detailed questions, we're definitely going to answer those as a part of that that virtual event that we run.
Yes.
But because there's so much information out there, and we just want to we want to create a community that can all come together and share and give value to one another and really value one another's time.
And you turned me on to another one, SoundSurf, which I signed up for, and it's a blue ocean. It's like YouTube, but like people are finding my stuff and they're following me like a much faster rate than on YouTube.
Well, you mentioned it, Scott. When something is new and you're first to adopt, you're going to get the benefit of all of the growth that they get platform-wide.
You have such a leg up when you're an early adopter.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of bonuses.
Yeah,
and I really appreciate your time, JaMarr. This has been an amazing. I don't ever pitch on my podcast. I don't do ads. I don't pitch my own stuff except maybe for 3 seconds at the end. I'll say, hey, go to my website. But part of this Web3 and me launching my first NFT, me dipping my toes into the crypto space, I felt warranted talking about because it's something that I want everyone in comedy to aspire to and to learn from, because I feel like this is a really big growth opportunity. We're at a really critical juncture, at a critical moment, with this being a very new thing. And it's a really important time to jump into something like that when the opportunities are the greatest.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for your time. And hey, thanks everybody for joining us. My first live How to Write Funny podcast. It was really fun having you guys all here. And again, any questions we didn't get to, join us for the virtual event. Anybody who's a coin holder is going to get all the details on where and how to join us for that. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. And JaMarr, we'll talk to you soon.
Peace, love, and prosperity.
And thank you for listening. Hey, if you're interested in checking out the Jim Key, go to howtowritefunny.com/key. You have until May 13th at noon to enjoy all the bonuses that we talked about in this episode. I hope to see you in there.